Good evening and welcome into the Pacers Podcast Show. I'm Kyle Newman, your host.
And I'm Rhett Hensley, your co-host.
We have a great lineup for the next 45 minutes. We will discuss the Pacers' last 7 games, chat about the best first-round playoff matchups in the East for Indiana and why, answer the question, where does the malice in the palace rank all-time in NBA brawls throughout history, and preview the Pacers' next 4 games. Rhett, it's great to be back with you. I was a little down and out for the count this past week. We're happy to be back for our 5th Pacers podcast show. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me. It was not a pretty week, but I'm back and I'm feeling good. Rhett, glad to have you back.
Glad to have you. Glad to have you back and healthy again. And congratulations on the engagement.
Oh, wow. He went there. I appreciate it, buddy. Yes, I am a newly engaged man. So, good times, exciting times, and we're ready to kick this Pacers podcast show off March 25th. All right. So, let's get into this first segment, Rhett. We're going to discuss the Pacers' last 7 games here first, starting back on March 12th. Home game against Milwaukee. Indiana continued its winning ways with a thrilling victory at Bankers Life, 109-103 in overtime. With this win, the Pacers extended their winning streak to 7 and continued as the hottest team in the NBA since the All-Star break at 9-1. Now, I realize it's a different story now, but we're a little behind. So, Indiana is now 2-1 against the Bucks this season. In this game, Rodney Stuckey led the way for the Pacers with 25 points. I apologize, everyone. I am broadcasting from my dorm, and what you hear in the background is the train. It comes by quite frequently. Sorry about that. All right. Indiana was led by Rodney Stuckey, who had 25 points. George Hill and Luis Scola each added 17. For the Bucks, Michael Carter-Williams led the way with 28, followed by Ersan Ilyasova with 19 and Chris Middleton with 18. This was a game of lead changes. There were 8 of them, and ties. There were also 8 of those. The Pacers committed 20 turnovers against a team that is number 1 in the league in forcing turnovers. However, the team rallied from a trailing first half thanks to great bench production. Rhett, what did you see in this game?
I saw it was an interesting game that I was watching. I would like to point out when we last had our Pacers podcast, I did call them winning by more than 5 points.
Oh, wow, toot his own horn. Boop, boop.
Yeah, toot a toot. But, I saw that, the Bucks didn't shoot really well. They shot around 38%, 28% from three-point range. So they actually struggled, and the Pacers, they shot 50% from field goal range. And I just said field goal range. I meant field goals. But
field goals. Range. We're not on the golf course, right?
Yeah. So, but, it did go into overtime. And, it was this exciting game. But they definitely showed up in overtime and took control and pushed themselves past Milwaukee.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. This intrigued me. Indiana's backups outscored the Bucks' backups 52-10. Talk about great bench production.
Holy cow.
When you have bench production like that, you're going to win games. And
Yes.
again, it hurt the Pacers that they turned the ball over 20 times. That kept Milwaukee around. But when your backups give you that much production, that's a winning recipe. So this was another resilient effort from this Pacers group, not to mention another big game for Rodney Stuckey, who seems to be on fire as of late. These two teams will meet one more time on March 26th at Milwaukee. Good win there for the Pacers. However, that's when it stopped. 2 days later, March 14th, at home again against Boston. Indiana's winning streak of 7 games came to an end. 93-89, 4-point loss. Indiana is now 1-2 against the Celtics this season. Rhett, you and I actually were able to watch this game together. It was a tough loss.
Sure was. And, turnovers were a big issue also for both teams, actually. But, oh my goodness, Tyler Zeller had a good game.
The game of his life.
18 points.
18 points.
18 points.
Yeah, absolutely. George Hill led all scorers with a season-high 30 points. C.J. Miles added 13 for the Pacers. And as Rhett said, Zeller had 18. Brandon Bass, Avery Bradley, and Jay Crowder each had 16 points. This was a game where Indiana played from behind the whole time. They really beat themselves with missed opportunities. We talked about this, Rhett, as we're watching it, shaking our head, pulling our hair out down the stretch. Particularly late in the fourth, they were not hustling to the loose balls for the rebounds, and they turned the ball over. Every time the Pacers made a run, the Celtics answered. Indiana really needed more offensive production. It was just the George Hill show, really. And I think Boston's depth and team basketball won the game for them. So, Rhett, what did you see in this game?
I expected the Indiana Pacers to win this game, but especially since, Isaiah Thomas was out.
And they had just won 7 in a row.
Yeah, and, I feel like you got to have heart when you run out there. And they didn't look like they were playing with any heart that day. So
that's right.
I think that is one of the things that held them back from going out and winning that game.
No doubt. Well, Indiana has lost 12 games by 5 or fewer points this season. A lot of losses there.
Doesn't surprise me.
A close couple points, couple possessions. That's a close margin. These teams meet one final time on April 1st at Boston in what will be a pivotal rematch for playoff seedings, as we will get to here in a little bit. All right. 2 days later, March 16th, home against Toronto, another homestand. The Pacers have now lost 2 in a row for the first time since January in this game. Indiana dropped another one, 117-98, finishing the regular season 0-3 against the Raptors. Lou Williams led the way for Toronto with 24 points. DeMar DeRozan added 22, and Kyle Lowry had a triple-double, 20 points, 11 rebounds, 10 assists. For the Pacers, George Hill led the way with 23, followed by Rodney Stuckey with 20, and Roy Hibbert with 17.
He did say it. Roy Hibbert.
Roy Hibbert had a double-digit scoring performance.
I would like to point out that I think this could be his end-of-the-season spurt, just like last year.
Oh, we got it recorded, folks. He says it. He's calling it just like last year, Roy Hibbert. His time is now.
Yes. And I would like to point out in 4 turnovers for the Indiana Pacers during this game. 4 turnovers. I said it. 4 turnovers. That ties a franchise record for the least amount of turnovers.
Yeah.
That is an incredible number.
Yeah.
But one of the things that did kill the Pacers in this game was they got out-rebounded by 15 rebounds.
Oh, yeah. I had that down to 51-36 on the rebound margin. Not going to get it done. Toronto turned the ball over 12 times. It's like you said, 8 turnover differential there. And the other big issue here was Indiana's defense. Toronto shot 47% from the field. They made 12 three-pointers out of 23 attempts, and they finished with the highest point total all season on Indiana's home floor. That is not a good sign for Indiana at home. So, really, Toronto's defense played well. They limited Indiana to shooting 43%. So,
now,
these things... Oh, go ahead, Rhett.
I would like to point out when a team shoots 10%, I said 10% from 3-point range,
That's like
that's when you know.
10%. That's a nice discount rate at a restaurant.
I know. Well, not a great discount rate.
Not for you.
But,
Not
yeah,
for a cheapsake.
yeah. But 2 for 19 from beyond the arc. That is when you know that you just need to take it inside, and you just can't hit that game. So
Boy,
that
makes a couple of young bucks like us feel pretty good.
I know.
Get out there and show them our 3-point skills.
No kidding.
Yeah,
no kidding. They needed something there.
Yeah, no kidding. That is not good. So playing catch up all night for the Pacers ultimately led to another loss against Toronto. So 2 days later, March 18th, at Chicago, in the final regular season matchup against the Bulls, the Pacers lost again, 103-86, increasing their losing streak to 3 games. Indiana is now 2-2 against Chicago this season. Nikola Mirotic led the way for the Bulls with 25, followed by Mike Dunleavy with 21, and Pau Gasol, the ex-Pacer trader, and Pau Gasol with 19. For the Pacers, Solomon Hill was the leader with 13. Not a real great stat there when your leading scorer is 13 points, followed by Roy Hibbert with 12. Now, Indiana did have 6 players in double figures, but still, 13 points as a high is not going to get it done. This was a game where Indiana struggled on defense once again, and Chicago was hot shooting. I mean, NBA Jam type of hot, old school, especially from 3. It seemed every time the Pacers tried to make a run, Mirotic and Dunleavy would answer. Chicago hit 10 threes in this game. And really, Rhett, I think this Bulls team proved their depth despite being without Derrick Rose, Jimmy Butler, and Taj Gibson. What did you see in this game?
You know, the Pacers got out-rebounded by 14 rebounds. That is just, again, shows you that you can't win a game.
No, fundamentals.
Yep. You got a 7'2" big man down there. He's got to do something.
That's right.
But you know, you're gonna lose ball games if you don't rebound the ball. That's just plain and simple. I mean, they shot very similar field goals. 40% for the Indiana Pacers, 42 for the Bulls. But you know, they did hit 10 3-pointers, as you said. But it was just a game of they got out-rebounded, plain and simple.
Sure was.
They could have had a very good chance of winning the game if they would have grabbed some rebounds and made good use out of it.
I agree. Again, another loss for the Pacers. They've been playing on a 2-night trend, it seems, because 2 days later, March 20th, at Cleveland, in the final regular season matchup against the Cavs, the Pacers kept their losing streak going at 4, losing 95-92, a very tough-fought game, another close loss. Indiana is now 2-2 versus Cleveland this season. This Cleveland team, to me, Rhett, has really found their chemistry. They're an NBA best 26-6 since January 15th. LeBron James led all scorers with 29. Kyrie Irving added 13 for the Cavs. For the Pacers, George Hill led the way with 24, followed by Hibbert with 20. I will say this. It was encouraging in this game to see, first of all, George Hill has really been having some monster games lately, trying to lead this team as the veteran. And Hibbert has had a few 15-plus point games. 20 was a nice performance for him. We need this more often. Again, maybe Rhett's prediction will be it for Roy Hibbert. Yeah, exactly. So this was a great division rival game, back and forth. Both teams were trading blows. Indiana finally showed some fight during their losing streak. But really, Rhett, LeBron took over for the Cavs late in the fourth, which was the difference.
Yeah. Unfortunately. Not a fan of LeBron, but he did have 29 points.
Yeah.
And tell you what, that's a good number right there. But you know, the thing with the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're having good chemistry right now. But one thing that is an upset for them is Kevin Love.
Yes.
He is not finding anything with them, which my prediction is he will be gone this summer. But that's just my prediction. But, you know, the Indiana Pacers, I feel like they've been shooting too many threes. They took 20 threes, hit 8, 40%. I feel like they just need to take it into the rack more. And, 2 of those threes were at the end of the game when they were trying to try and put them over the Cavaliers. But I thought they should have drove it in like a normal team should have. But, that turnaround three-pointer from C.J. Miles, I thought that was just ridiculous.
Yeah, not a good shot selection, and really that leads into what I say. For Indiana, poor shot selections late really hurt them. Obviously, as well as not being able to stop James, who absolutely destroys Indiana, it seems, every time they play. They've had the rival going for years now. I agree, Rhett. The refs did a poor job down the stretch in this game. And so, really, you can't blame a game on the refs. There were some questionable calls, but you kind of get that feeling as the Cavs were at home, close game. But really, it was the LeBron James show and another loss for the Pacers. So,
yeah.
The very next night, though, Indiana thought maybe they could turn things around. Back at the Fieldhouse versus Brooklyn, the Pacers lost 5 in a row.
What a crazy game.
It really was. In a high-scoring game, they lost 123 to 111. Indiana is now 1-1 against the Nets this year. Brook Lopez led all scorers with 26. Bojan Bogdanovic added 21, and Deron Williams had 17 for the Nets. George Hill led the way for the Pacers with 18. Solomon Hill and Luis Scola each added 17 for Indiana. Rhett, this was a game where Indiana struggled once again defensively, which is unlike them. It seems that they're getting away from their identity, allowing the Nets to shoot 61% from the floor and 50%.
That is crazy.
It is, and then 50% from downtown. The Pacers couldn't get over the hump. Every time they made a run, Brooklyn answered, and especially Joe Johnson in the fourth. So, Rhett, what did you see in this game?
Well, once again, they couldn't hit the three ball, but they did shoot 50% from a field goal. But when you have somebody shooting 61%, I don't think you're gonna have a very good chance of winning a game.
No.
But and the other aspect of it is play some defense.
Right on. Defense is key, and it was not good. Yeah. The Pacers entered this game number 3 in the NBA in points allowed per game, 96, and opponent's field goal percentage, 43. But they gave up a season high 123 points. Brooklyn, again, shot 61% from the floor. That is the highest mark Indiana has allowed on its home court in franchise history. Unbelievable. Bad defense, and you're going to lose games, even at home, when it's that poor of a performance. So these teams will meet one final time on March 31st at Brooklyn. The final game, just a couple of nights ago, home again in the Fieldhouse against the Houston Rockets. Final regular season matchup against Houston. Indiana continued its early spring woes, losing 110 to 100. Indiana has now reached its longest losing streak since January at 6 games. The Pacers are now 0-2 against the Rockets this year. This is the difference in the game, Rhett, from my standpoint, and I think everybody would agree. It was another monster game from MVP candidate James Fear the Beard Harden, who led all scorers with 44 points. Josh Smith added 18, and Donatas Motiahunas added 17 for Houston. For the Pacers, C.J. Watson led the way with 23 points, followed by George Hill with 20 and Roy Hibbert with 18. This was a game where Indiana once again were sounding like a broken record, but they struggled on defense. They couldn't stop Harden, who now leads the NBA with 8 40-point games. Houston hit 13 threes, and he couldn't miss, Rhett.
Well, here's my thing on James Harden. Let me get into this. Any person that just drives it in the lane and sticks out their arm, he had 21 points from the free throw line.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a second. That's unbelievable. But you know what? The Pacers need to know the scouting report on James Harden. That's what he does. And the issue was bad defense once again.
How I look at it is, if you're driving into the lane, and him just sticking his arms out, because he just extends his arms. He knows how to make contact, which is smart.
Yeah, he does.
But I think that that's just ridiculous. It is poor defense also, but I don't know. I wouldn't know how to stop that.
You can't. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. I believe he's leading the league in points per game. He's absolutely dominating. He's doing it without Dwight Howard.
Westbrook, I believe, is leading the league in points right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, he's right up there, and, Indiana, they just couldn't stop him. And it seems like every time the Pacers made a run in this game, Harden would answer. But you know what? Indiana didn't take advantage of the 19 turnovers committed by the Rockets. And that's another issue. As Rhett mentioned, Harden hit 21 free throws. How about this? The most ever made by a Pacers opponent. As a team, Houston made 35 free throws. That's just unacceptable. And when you
95% from the free throw line.
Yeah, 33 of 35, absolutely incredible. And
we know what they do at the end of practice. That's for sure.
No kidding. You make a free throw, you get a donut. Let's see. Indiana has already had 4 losing streaks of 5 or more games for the first time since 1988 and 89. And now the Pacers have given up 233 points in their last 2 games, both at home. 233 points in 2 games at home is not playoff worthy. That is not Indiana Pacers basketball.
Oh.
So let's see if in their next few games they can get back on track. But let's get into the second part of this segment, Rhett, and talk about the best first-round playoff matchups in the East for Indiana and why. Let's start with their record. They're currently 30-40, and they're in 10th place in the East. So they have 12 games left. The Pacers are only 1 game behind Boston for the 8th, and they're only 2 behind the Heat for the 7th. It is a big cluster still, and it will be for the remaining games. Rhett, if Paul George doesn't return this regular season, I still think the Pacers will make the playoffs, but here's where I've changed a little. A couple of weeks ago, I predicted Indiana would finish in the 7th spot, which is where they currently stand. Now, no, I'm sorry, I got confused there. No, I predicted that they would finish actually ahead of Milwaukee in the 6th spot. They're in the 10th right now. But now I believe the Pacers will barely get the 8th seed when the regular season ends. That's my prediction. The Pacers' remaining schedule is proving to be tougher than predicted, and Indiana is a huge funk. They're in a huge funk as of late. So if the playoffs started today, the Pacers would be out. Now, for my best matchup, Indiana's 2-2 against Cleveland so far this year. I know we talked about this. We'd love to see Indiana play Cleveland to face LeBron once again in the playoffs. However, I don't think this would be the best first-round playoff matchup for the Pacers. This is simply because I think Cleveland is the best team in the East. They're making it, which would make it a tough first-round matchup for the Pacers, a team that may not have Paul George back. So I think the best first-round matchup for Indiana in the first round would be the Chicago Bulls. Indiana is 2-2 against Chicago so far this season. and star Derrick Rose is likely out rest of the season.
Oh no, that's where you're wrong. An announcement just came out.
Oh, we've got breaking news, folks.
About 3 hours ago. He is coming back within a week or two from ESPN.
We've heard that before, haven't we?
We have, but hold your breath.
Yeah,
hold your breath. But that is the news.
All right, you know what? It's not going to change my stance. Even if Derrick Rose comes back, he hasn't been looking like the Derrick Rose. I think he would be like kind of Paul George coming back, limited minutes, trying to find his game again. So I do believe that Chicago would be the best matchup. Now, this matchup, I believe it would be tough, but I think the Bulls will outlast the Raptors in the seedings to match up with Indiana. Now, for it to be the Bulls and the Pacers, though, the Pacers would likely need to at least get to the 7th, and Chicago have to get to the 2. And they're battling it out with Toronto and Cleveland. I think, really, Chicago has a better chance at the 3, which would mean Indiana would need to get to the 6, which is reasonable because they're only 4.5 games back from Milwaukee for the 6th. But that would be the case for that scenario. But I still think that would be the best matchup. Indiana seems to match up well, despite this last game, against the rival Bulls. And Chicago has been battling injuries and dealing with some chemistry issues. Also, the Pacers have a good chance to steal a game or two on the road against Chicago, as they've already won at the United Center this year. I also think the Pacers bench is deeper than the Bulls bench on most nights. So that's the matchup I would like to see Indiana play in the first round. Rhett, what do you think?
Well, let me just give you my opinion.
Well, please do.
Alrighty here. So, I feel like the Indiana Pacers, with Paul George, I think that they would grab the 7th seed. But without him, I think that, they will likely make it to the 8th seed. But if they continue on this track, then no. But if they get the 8th seed,
just to clarify, so you think they'll get to the 7 if Paul George comes back, but if he doesn't, you think they may get the 8th?
They may get the 8th. They could possibly get the 7th. That's something that is still there and in their territory. I think that the 6th seed would be a little bit of a stretch.
So you think there's no chance really for the 6th? Bucks are playing good basketball. Pacers are right now.
Yeah,
it's obviously possible, but you don't like that?
Yeah, I think that if they would have stayed on track, that 6th seed, that would have been theirs, I feel like. But, when you're on this streak at the end of the season, that's just never good.
No, you want to go into the playoffs winning.
What are we seeing like last year? Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, deja vu maybe, but here's the thing. I don't disagree with that. So what matchup though? There's your seedings. Based on those seedings, it sounds a lot like it might be the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Well, the seeding I would love to have is playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they're a team that I feel like they could fall apart pretty easily. You got Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving, and LeBron James. Kevin Love, I feel like he's a little emotional right now. Doesn't get too many touches, not playing well. And we so far in the season we have played very well against them. And it helps that I hate LeBron. So I would love to see them get knocked out of the playoffs first round.
He's on record. He's a LeBron hater.
I am a LeBron hater.
Well, I agree. Now, here's the thing, though. That would mean, most likely, that for that matchup to happen, Indiana would need to get to the 7th seed because I don't think Cleveland is going to jump ahead of the Hawks for the 1 seed.
Yeah.
So that would
I believe the
7-2.
Hawks are locked in right now for that.
You hope the 7 and 2 seedings to play Cleveland, And you think that is also the best matchup for the Pacers?
Yeah, just from what I've seen, they've played very well against them. And when you see Bankers live, LeBron James in the building, that place is
it's
just
on fire.
It is
It's
on fire.
electric. It
And
is.
when you have the crowd that pumped up, and that just gets the players pumped up. I mean, especially if Paul George come back with the fans, sold out crowd every night, that would
That's the Pacers' home court advantage that bodes well for them.
yes.
And
I
we have
feel
seen
like
it firsthand, several games.
Yes, feel like that'd be the best matchup. Chicago, I do agree that could be a good one, but I feel like they would out rebound the Indiana Pacers by a ton, unless Paul George, not Paul George, sorry, Roy Hibbert did step it up and grab some rebounds.
Okay.
But you got Pau Gasol on their team.
Yeah,
Goodness gracious,
he's really
Joe
adding it.
Kim Noah.
The depth. There's no
both
doubt
of them.
about it that their starting lineup is legit. I just think that their bench is not as consistent as the Pacers has been, at least. And I think the Pacers would have that matchup advantage there from the bench. But here's the thing. Final thoughts here. I don't disagree with you. Here's the thing. The Pacers are 2-2 against the Bulls this season. They're also 2-2 against the Cavs this season. Pacers aren't afraid of either team, and they've gotten 2 wins against both of them. So it can be done. And the final thought, if you look back to when LeBron was on the Heat and that rivalry with Indiana, very similar to what Cleveland has right now. You had the big three in Miami.
The
you
big
had the
joke.
big three in Cleveland. So when you make that point about their chemistry, and they haven't even been all together like the Heat were for 3 years, 4 years. So you put them in their first year together into the playoffs for the first time since LeBron left in 2010. I can see there being some issues there with them, not to mention
shaken up.
Exactly, especially if Paul George comes back. That's a different story for another segment, for another show. But I agree. Either matchup I can see being okay. I like Cleveland. I like Chicago. Rhett likes Cleveland. And that's that. We will see. All right, let's get into the second segment here and answer an interesting question that I love. Where does the Malice in the Palace rank all time in NBA brawls throughout history? Rhett, we have been looking forward to this for 2 weeks, and we're going to get into it. To me, Rhett, this Pacers-Pistons brawl is the number 1 brawl in NBA history, hands down, not even close. But before we get into it a little more, let's recap for everyone what happened in case they somehow did not see it or find out about it. It was a game between the division rivals Indiana Pacers and the Detroit Pistons on November 19, 2004 at the Palace of Auburn Hills in Detroit. With less than a minute to go in the game, a fight broke out among players on the court. It was sparked by Ron Artest fouling Ben Wallace hard. After the fight broke up, they got into it, intense. A fan threw beer from the stands at Pacers player Ron Artest while he was lying on the scorer's table. Artest then ran into the crowd and ignited a brawl between players and fans. It only escalated from there, with Steven Jackson throwing punches along with other Pacers and Pistons players. The chaos lasted for what seemed like an eternity, with fans continuing to yell profanities and throw items at the Pacers players as they walked through the tunnel into the locker room. The game was, of course, called off with 45 seconds left, with the Pacers winning 97-82. After the game, the NBA suspended 9 players for a total of 146 games, which led to $11 million in salary being lost by the players. 5 players were also charged with assault and eventually sentenced to a year of probation and community service. 5 fans also faced criminal charges and were banned from attending Pistons home games for life. The fight also led the NBA to increase security between players and fans, and to limit the sale of alcohol. Rhett, I still remember this fight clearly to this day. I can picture it in my mind. I'm going to give you my other top 5 here. They round out my top 5 and then get to you on yours. Other great brawls in my top 5 would include, at number 2, the whole Bad Boy Pistons teams versus everybody. This team in the late 80s, early 90s was notorious for being the bullies of the NBA, and they were hated by everyone but Detroit fans. Detroit's Bill Laimbeer was the worst of them all. He by himself got into fights with Robert Parrish, Charles Barkley, Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, etc. My number 3, Reggie Miller versus Michael Jordan, February 10th, 1993. Reggie shoves Jordan, and Jordan grabs Miller's face at half court and drives him into the rest of the chaos from both teams. This was wild. The intent. This just goes to show how the great, beloved Reggie Miller of the Indiana Pacers could get under someone's skin by his trash talking and his little body bumping. What a brawl that was. My number 4, Denver versus the New York Knicks, December 16, 2006. With a little over a minute left in the game, Knicks guard Marty Collins committed a hard foul on J.R. Smith on a fast break. What happened after that was an all-out brawl that went into the stands. Fans observed one of the NBA's young stars heave a hard punch to the jaw of Collins prior to running away from the brawl. That was wild. And my number 5, Larry Bird versus Dr. J, November 9th, 1984. The great Pacer. The great president he is, that Pacer. During an intense battle, Bird and Irving get twisted up in a clutter down court, leaving Larry Bird very upset about what just occurred. After Bird gets up from the ground and loses his mind, a brawl breaks out in the Boston Garden. The result was Dr. J delivering a solid, direct punch to the face of Bird with the assist of his teammates. So, Rhett, that's my top 5. Everyone, if you have not seen those brawls, I highly recommend looking them up on YouTube. Great watch. So the bottom line is the Malice in the Palace is the greatest brawl of all time and will never be surpassed in my mind, Rhett. What do you think?
Well, I do agree. Bad Boys versus everybody. I think that's probably my second favorite. And,
Second. Okay. So he's on my radar with that as well.
And my third would be Reggie Miller versus Kobe Bryant.
Oh, he went with the other one. Hey, there are a lot of choices. Okay.
Yes. That one was a very interesting one. The cameras couldn't even keep on that. Out of nowhere, Kobe and Reggie just go at it. He throws him up on the announcer's table. There are just tons of people surrounding that. They're throwing punches at each other while they both got each other in headlocks. That is a great one. And, then my third favorite would be Shaquille O'Neal versus Charles Barkley.
Oh, yes.
That one was an interesting one. It was more funny than anything, I think.
Funny.
First of all, boy, do you have to have some balls to go against Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes, you
Goodness
do. That
gracious.
man is huge.
That man is huge. And, Charles Barkley was at the bottom. I would just like to say that, as expected. But, yeah, Shaquille O'Neal would not want to mess with him. And my fourth favorite would be the Dr. J and Larry Bird one.
Okay, he's on the board there.
That one was a good one. Enjoyed that one.
Another great trash talker, Larry Bird.
Oh yeah. Yes, he is a good trash talker.
Yep, the Celtic, boy, I tell you what, now with the Pacers, couldn't end up any better. Reggie Miller, it really worked out. I agree with that one, though, as I had my top 5. Good choice. Yes. And how about your last?
My last one would be, just because it is so funny, Steve Nash getting hip checked into the
Oh, geez, I remember that one.
getting hip checked into the announcer's table. Oh man, poor guy.
That was pretty
right
nasty.
there, that that right there is probably the reason why he pulled his back this year picking up groceries.
Yeah, maybe the accumulation of his 19 years in the NBA, including
Yes.
some tough hits like that, could be the reason why. Yeah, I can understand that, and I can see that. Yeah, Steve Nash, he had a lot of banged up injuries and plays over his career. So no doubt, there's
guy.
his top five. So before we get to this last segment, though, is it safe to say in your mind as well, nothing will ever touch the malice in the palace?
You know, anything's possible. But
What would have to happen for that to be passed? Because that was
oh my,
insane.
tell
Does
you
someone
what,
have to
that
get killed? I mean,
that I don't. It would be very, very hard to surpass that brawl. So I don't know if anybody can touch that, but it is possible. But it would have to take something pretty big, and you can't go. You got a crazy guy as Ron Artest, or my bad, Meta World Peace.
that's right.
And
What's his name anymore? No one can
yeah,
remember.
yeah, Panda Love or something. But yeah, he is one psycho, and tell you what, he makes for great entertainment.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. All right. Well, I say that is pretty solid right there. I'll stick with it. I'll stick with the Pacers' love. Absolutely. Number one, Malice in the Palace. You heard it. All right. Our last segment, we're going to preview the Pacers' next 4 games. Just after our show tonight at Washington, Indiana is 0-2 against the Wizards this season. The first loss was back on November 5th at Washington, 96-94 in overtime. John Wall was the difference in this one with 31 points. Donald Sloan led the way for the Pacers with 31 himself. Indiana was without David West, Rodney Stuckey, George Hill, and C.J. Watson. A lot of injuries there. The second loss was just 3 days later on November 8th at Bankers Life, 97-90. John Wall once again led the way for the Wizards with 18. Solomon Hill led the way for the Pacers with 28. And Indiana was once again without West and Stuckey, as well as George Hill and C.J. Miles. So, Rhett, I think this third matchup will go in the Pacers' favor. They will break the losing streak tonight. I'm feeling it. Indiana will get a win. My keys to the game are fundamentals for the Pacers. Can they rebound the basketball? Can they make their free throws? Can they take care of the basketball? And how about get back to their defensive identity? I predict the Pacers will win by 3. It will be a tough game. Washington, as we know from last year in the playoffs, plays Indiana very well. 103-100 Pacers win. What do you think, Rhett?
Well, they're going to have to do some things different than what they've been doing. They're going to have to go back to their original identity, play some defense, grab rebounds. Everybody's just going to be having to come out on all cylinders. But I believe that they can do it, and I have a prediction. I'm going to go a little away with you on that.
Uh-oh.
And I'm going to say they're going to at least win by 6 points.
Oh, I didn't have to do the wah. He's picking them to win as
Yes.
well. Good.
Yes,
So
I am.
you think Indiana gets back on track here. It's do or die.
Yes, it is crunch time, and they have to do something.
No doubt. They do. Well, we will see. It will be interesting. These teams will meet one final time in the regular season on April 14th at Bankers Life. Okay. The next night at Milwaukee in the final regular season matchup against the Bucks, a team that is playing very well now. Indiana is 2-1 against Milwaukee this year. In the first matchup on November 4th at Indiana, the Pacers lost 87-81. Brandon Knight led the way for the Bucks in this one with 23. Chris Copeland led the Pacers with 19. Again, Indiana, injuries. They were without David West, George Hill, and C.J. Watson. In the second matchup on January 2nd at Milwaukee, the Pacers got revenge with a close 94-91 victory. C.J. Miles had 22 for Indiana. Brandon Knight led Milwaukee once again with 20. In this last matchup, Rhett, March 12th at Bankers Life, Indiana won again, 2 in a row in overtime, 109-103. This was their last win before the current losing streak. Stuckey led the way for the Pacers with 25. Carter Williams led the way for the Bucks with 28. Rhett, I'm going to make that prediction with those two leading scorers. I think with my keys to the game in this one, I'm going to say that Rodney Stuckey will be our leading scorer and have another big game, high 20s. I think Michael Carter Williams is going to have another big game too, high 20s. But I think that this final matchup will go the Bucks' way at home. I am going to predict Indiana to lose a close one, 94-90. But my keys to the game are, in order for that not to happen for Indiana, again, they have to get back to their defensive identity, and they have to get rebounds. This young Bucks team is scrappy. They have a lot of good players. Jason Kidd is doing great with this team. They are really rebuilding. It will be a tough game at home. They're going to want revenge for the previous losses. So, 94-90, I do predict the Pacers to lose. And those are my keys to the game. Rhett, what do you see in this game?
Well, Kyle, I'm gonna have to go with you on that one.
Okay, 2 for 2.
Yeah, shocker. So, they are going to be playing away from home. This young Bucks team, Jason Kidd's done great with this team so far. They have building great. Michael Carter Williams, great addition. Miles Plumlee. Feel like that they're a young, scrappy team. They are coming off a little, I believe last night, a game winner. So I feel like that's going to be giving them a boost for the next couple games. But I feel like they will, at the end, the Bucks will pull through and pull this one out. But, the keys are to the game if they want to win,
And they want to win.
Yes.
Believe me.
Back to their defensive identity, grab rebounds. They gotta have C.J. Miles, David West, Luis Scola. Yeah, coming out well. Everybody's just going to be having to go on all cylinders, just like every game should be from here on out. But we'll see if it happens.
Yes, we will. No nights off for the Pacers. All right. 3 days later, they'll be at Bankers Life against the Dallas Mavericks in the last matchup of the regular season against Dallas. Indiana is 1-0 against the Mavs this season. The lone victory came back on November 24th at the Mavs, 111-100. Donald Sloan led the Pacers with 29. Where has he been? Injured, first of all, but besides that, I don't know. Donald Sloan led the Pacers with 29. Indiana had 7 players in double figures. Monte Ellis led Dallas with 24, followed by Dirk with 22. Rhett, I think this final rematch game will be revenge for the Mavs, stealing a close victory, 102-99. Dallas is a hard place to go into and play. I think the Pacers play a good game. If they are to get the win, I'm not going to predict it, but if they don't get the win, let's say if they do get the win, my keys to this game for that to happen, fundamentals first and foremost, it's key for every game, especially down the stretch here. You have to play fundamentally sound basketball, especially on the road against a team that's playing well in the West, to get a victory. And I'd like to see Indiana make some three-pointers. How about Chris Copeland? Let's get some of these guys off of the bench to contribute with some threes and go from there, because Dallas can shoot it. No doubt about it. So I'd like to see Indiana match Dallas with some shooting, have a good shooting performance night. Fundamentals, those are my keys to the game. Rhett, what do you see in this matchup?
I see the Mavs are not one of my favorite teams in the league, especially with the Rondo addition. I feel like, they are becoming a team that could be going in the wrong direction in my books.
Really?
Yes. Rondo, I don't think he mixes well with that team. So, which even their coach has come out and said they haven't been playing hard. They haven't been playing to their full potential. So, in this, I believe the Pacers will pull off a win. It's going to be a close one. It is tough going into the Mavs arena, but the Indiana Pacers, I believe, are going to be coming off as I predicted, a loss. So I think that they will come in and just play smash mouth basketball and get the job done.
Well, there you go, going the other way.
George Hill, my prediction of being a leading scorer in that game.
There you go, George Hill. You heard it here first. Rhett Hensley. Okay, 2 nights later, last game before our next show next week, the last day of March, the 31st, at Brooklyn in the final matchup against the Nets this season. Indiana is 1-1 against Brooklyn this year. The lone win was back on December 27th at Brooklyn, 110-85. Stuckey led the way for the Pacers with 20. Jarrett Jack led the way for the Nets with 22. This was the game where Kevin Garnett gave a little blow to David West. Got a little crazy. Good win for the Pacers. In the last matchup, on March 21st, just a few nights ago, at Indiana, Brooklyn got revenge with a 123-111 victory. I think this final matchup, Rhett, will go in the Pacers' favor. They will get revenge, and they will win by 10, 90-80. My keys to this game, once again, and it always will be, fundamentals, baby. Make your free throws, get your rebounds, take care of the ball, and you'll be good. Especially since it's at Brooklyn again where they already won. So that's another good sign there for Indiana. I think they get the 10-point victory. Rhett, what do you see in this game?
I predict that they win.
He's on board. 3 of 4. Ain't bad.
Yeah, but, they are going to have to protect the ball, rebound, play great defense. It's never easy game going into someone else's arena. But, the Indiana Pacers, I believe, will pull off the victory. They just got to, stick to the key factors. And like I said, that is rebounding, taking care of the ball, scoring.
Stick to the fundamentals, baby.
Exactly.
That's right. All right. Well, Rhett, that wraps it up. The 5th Pacers podcast show is in the books. 6-1 next Wednesday. All right. We are back on track. To recap what was talked about on the show, we discussed the Pacers' last 7 games. We chatted about the best first-round playoff matchups in the East for Indiana and why. We answered the question, where does the Malice and the Palace rank all-time in NBA brawls throughout history? And we previewed the Pacers' next 4 games. That is all we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning into our show. Feel free to leave any comments, tweet, and